Yeah, if it could have gone wrong, trust me, it did. Not the block. The block was a great and easy sew. It was the tech stuff to make the video. I have had so many audio issues in the recording of this block, and truth is, I am recording this intro for like the 20th time, and I'm still not even sure that it's fixed. Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video, we're going to work on week number 2 for the Mystery Boo Crew Quilt Along. This is a quilt along the Fat Quarter Shop hosted back in July of 2022, but several of you reached out and asked me if I would please sew this on my channel, and of course I said yes. So every Wednesday in the month of September, I am releasing another video in this 4-part series event. The link for week number 2 will be in the first comment down below this video. It is a beginner-friendly pattern and it is free. So if you like that, why don't you go grab the pattern, get your fabric ready, and meet me right back here. As I mentioned earlier, I had some tech difficulties, and so what that means for you is 2 things. Thing number 1, during the instructional portion of the video, you're only going to have the camera angle overhead and the close-up shot of me at the machine. Once we get into the instruction, you're going to not see this beautiful face. But thing number 2, that also means that the audio quality is not going to be as great as hopefully it is right now. You may notice that the audio changes once we get into the tutorial, and then it'll come back to a decent quality when we close out the video and I do my outro. Please don't hold that against me. We all do the best we can with what we have at the time, and unfortunately, I did not know that the audio was so bad, and I don't have enough of the fabric to make another one of these blocks. So we're just going to wing it, deal with it, get this video out there, and move on to week number 3. The first step is going to be to build out that candle. So to start with, we're going to grab 2 of our fabric G squares and our only fabric H square, and we're going to do the stitch and flip method in the top 2 corners of our fabric H square. Stitch and flip means that we're going to draw a line corner to corner right on the wrong side of our purple square. And then we're going to stitch just 1 thread to the right of it. And when we do that, what should happen is the piece that we have sewn on, when we flip it over, it should complete the square in this corner right here just perfectly. As long as that is the case, we will trim a 1/4 inch away from where we just sewed, press it over, and then do the other corner. There are a number of different ways that you can measure that line going from corner to corner. You can, of course, draw a line with a pen, or you can use some sort of marking system like diagonal seam tape to make sure that the fabric is going straight through the machine. That's what I used in this case. When I'm using diagonal seam tape, all I'm really doing is making sure that the corner up here is right under my needle and the corner down here is on the red line of my diagonal seam tape. And then I'm just keeping that bottom corner right on that red line mark as the fabric is going underneath the needle of my machine. Everything lines up nice and tidy. We're going to give this a good press so it lays nice and flat, and then grab our other little square and do the same thing so that we're making a point right at the top. Line up my first point at the needle, the bottom point on my mark, and hold it right on that mark all the way through. Trim a 1/4 inch away from where I just sewed. Flip it over and give it a good press. We're going to set that piece aside and then grab 2 of our fabric I and our only fabric J pieces. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stitch and flip in the 2 corners on the top edge of this piece. Now make sure that when you're doing this, you're looking at the short edge, not the long edges. You want to stitch and flip along the short edge of that fabric. It's a rectangle, not a square in this case. So I'm going to line up my first piece so that it's laying perfectly in that corner. Take it to my sewing machine and line up the point on my orange triangle at the needle and the other point on my orange triangle right on my mark that symbolizes that red line for my diagonal seam tape. It's actually just a gouge pen mark on the bed of my machine. bring it back over here. And this is what I was talking about before. I just want to push this over and make sure that the piece that I'm flipping up perfectly completes this corner, both from the top and the back. As long as it perfectly completes that corner, then I know I'm good to trim. But if it comes up a little bit shy, either too big or too small, I can rip the seam and try again. In my case, everything lined up really good, so I'm going to give it some nice heat after I trim it. That's going to have this lay really super flat, which is always a good idea to make sure your pieces lay flat before you add in the next piece. Got the second piece added on. We'll give that a good press as well. So now you have something that looks like this. And in the next step, we're going to grab 2 of our fabric G squares, and we're going to do the same thing that we did to the other short edge of the block. We're going to stitch and flip in these 2 corners. Lots of stitch and flips in this project. Now we've built out the wick of our candle. So we're going to grab this. We're going to grab the unit that we built out before, which is the flame of our candle. We're going to put that on top. And then we will also grab our fabric K, and we're going to put that at the bottom. So we're going to take a stitch here and a stitch here. Now it's important to note that we do have a point on either end of this middle unit that we really want to try to preserve if we can. And the way I'm going to preserve that point is I'm going to take this piece and flip it over. And when I take this to my machine, I'm going to sew with this piece on top. And you'll be able to see right here where the threads from this seam and the thread from this seam kind of come to an X intersection. As long as my needle stays just a thread to the right of this X when I'm sewing it, I will not lose my point. And since there's no point to worry about on this piece or this piece, I don't have to pin it if I don't want to. So I'm just going to stitch with this on top when I'm adding the top and the bottom to that middle wick piece. The instructions want us to press our seams away from the wick. So we're going to press the seams out towards those outer edges that we just added on. Give it some nice heat so it'll lay nice and flat. There is our candle unit. Now we just need to add our background strips to either side of it, which is fabric B. So I need 2 fabric B units, which I happen to have right here. We're going to put 1 on this side and 1 on the other. Take a seam right along here and press them out towards these purple strips. Give that some nice heat. I've got some messy edges along the side, so I'm just going to take a second and square this up to what the pattern says it should square to. There, that looks a little bit better. Now we're going to move on to the next step. We need our fabric L and our remaining 2 fabric G units. And on the bottom 2 corners of this fabric, we're going to stitch and flip so that we're adding little bits of purple to the bottom of the strip. We'll press that back towards the purple. And that's what we should have at the end of that step. We'll set that aside and reach in for 2 fabric D squares and 1 fabric Q square. We're going to stitch and flip on this one too, except we want to be careful to do opposite what we've been doing. We're going to put our stitch and flips in opposite corners. So you can see here what we've done is kind of before made them kind of facing in towards the same area. They would be pointing into the same one. This is going to be different. The seams are going to run parallel. So in one corner we'll have something that looks like this, and in the other corner we'll have something that looks like that. So we're kind of giving this white fabric a bit of a slant. I'm going to fold this out of the way with my finger so that I can stitch on the next piece, and just make sure that I'm going parallel to that seam. Once that's stitched on, we'll push everything over with our fingers and then grab some heat to get it to lay nice and flat. We need one of those units, and in the next step, we're going to make another one of those units, but this time the fabric is going to go in opposite directions. So we need one Q and two Ds to make it go this way, and then our other Q fabric and our other two pieces of D to make a unit that goes opposite direction. So if this one's going here, I need this one to go this way, which means I'm going to stitch in this corner and flip it back, and then this corner over here and flip it back. This is what we call mirror image, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. My pro tip for you is before you trim everything off, flip over your background fabric to make sure that not only are you completing these 90-degree corners, but your white strip in the middle is mirror image of this one. Now we're going to take both of those units and we're going to sew them together so that the purple meets in the middle and points up, and we're making kind of like this little bat wing looking thing. The instructions say to press this seam open. Give it some nice heat to get it to lay nice and flat. In our next step, we're going to take our candle unit, our legs, our candle tray, and our solid piece of fabric F and put it together to make a unit that looks like this. We're going to take all of our seams and we're going to press them towards here. So these two seams are going to press down and this seam is going to press up. I don't know if you can tell by the way, but I actually already started to sew this together and I had this piece on upside down. So just make sure that your block looks like this before you start sewing, because a candle drip tray that works like that is not going to be very functional. The wax is just going to run right off of your candle tray onto the ground. Nobody needs that. I think this block is haunted. First, I sewed the piece on upside down, and then my machine came unthreaded. It's just not a good day for me. Press this down, grab our next piece. Press this down. Grab our last piece. Press that one up. From the back side, we'll give it some heat so that everything is laying right the way the pattern tells it to. And then I'll flip it over. Give it a good press from the top. We're done with this unit. We're going to set it aside and move on to the next section. First, we're going to grab a fabric A and a fabric P. And in the lower right corner of our fabric A, we're going to stitch and flip our fabric P. So we will take our square, line it up at the bottom of our fabric A, and then stitch from the lower left corner to the upper right corner of our fabric P. That way, when it flips over, we should have something that looks kind of like this. We'll take this unit and press it over. give it some heat so it lays nice and flat, and then set that aside and grab your fabric N and 2 of your fabric Cs. For this step, we're going to take our fabric Cs and stitch and flip from corner to corner along the top long edge of that fabric N. So when we've sewn this together, you should have something that kind of looks like that. Once that is stitched on, we're going to press this over. And then set this aside too. For the next step, we need 3 fabric T's and 3 fabric S's. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The reality is for this step, it doesn't matter too much about fabric placement. All we're going to do is take all 3 of our fabric S's and all 3 of our fabric T's and sew them together so that we have 3 units that look like this. I'm not using directional fabric, but if you are, you'll want to do this a little bit differently. You'll want to sew 2 of the fabric T's onto the top of your fabric S's and then 1 of the fabric T's onto the bottom of your fabric S, because this is going to make the eyes and the nose or mouth of your ghost. The instructions do say that for all 3 of these pieces, the seams are going to be pressed over towards fabric S. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. And then we're going to sew all 3 units together so that we have 2 going in one direction and the middle one going in the opposite direction. Once that's assembled, we're going to press the seams out and away from that center row. So you have something that looks like that. Now we're going to take a fabric R and we're going to put it to the right of that unit, and a fabric O, and we're going to put it to the left of that unit. Those seams are going to be pressed towards fabric O and fabric R, so away from the nose and the mouth. And then we're going to set this aside and grab our fabric M, which is the body of our ghost, and our final fabric C, and in the lower right corner, I'm going to do this facing towards me, the lower right corner of this fabric M, we're going to stitch and flip that fabric C so that we have something that looks like that. Press this over towards that purple triangle. And now we're going to make our spooky ghost come to life. This unit that we just made goes on the bottom. The face comes next. And then the other long white piece comes up at the top. So we're going to take a seam here and a seam here. We're going to press those out away from the face, and then we'll put on the side units. There's the main part of our ghost. In the next step, we need to put a fabric A on the right side, and then the other fabric A that has the little snowballed piece on the left side, and that's going to be the tail for our ghost. Both of these seams will press underneath that fabric A strip. Now it's time to sew the seriously super spooky ghost to the candlestick. We're going to lay it down and the candlestick will go to the left of the ghost. So I'm just going to lay the candlestick on top, take my seam here, and we'll press that over towards the candlestick. Let's press this over. And then along the bottom of this block, we're going to take our final fabric E and just sew it all the way along the bottom and press this down towards fabric E once it's sewn on. So that's it. Thank you so much for sticking around with me and sewing this together despite the audio issues that we had. This is what our block now looks like, and we are halfway through the series. I am super excited to see this really cute Halloween wall quilt come together. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Like I said, the tech difficulties made this week a little weird, but I'm glad you're still here. If you are excited to move on to week number 3, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell off to the right of it so you get notifications, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, all of those things. But most importantly, enjoy your week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.